has always loved its treasures. The first man to dig into the earth and find a glimmering stone must have believed he had touched a fragment of the divine, and perhaps in a way he had. For beauty is not evil, but what man does with it often is. We were never condemned for seeing glory in creation. We were condemned for mistaking it for the Creator. Every stone that shines, every gem that glows, every jewel that catches the light carries a question written into it. Will you see through it, or will you stop at its surface? The earth hides its miracles in the dark, and man, unable to resist, descends into the shadows to find them. But the deeper he digs, the more he risks forgetting what he came for. The danger is not that the stone is enchanted, but that the seeker becomes so. He begins to believe that the glow belongs to him, that he can possess light instead of reflecting it. And this is how greed was born, not from the hunger for beauty, but from the desire to control it. The 5 great jewel houses of this age, those that drape the world in radiance and promise immortality in the form of ornament, have learned the language of enchantment better than any sorcerer of myth. They do not sell metal or stone. They sell meaning. They whisper to the heart, saying, "Wear this, and you will be seen." And we, who fear invisibility more than death, believe them. They do not deceive us with lies. They enchant us with truths rearranged. For what is more true than beauty, more sacred than light, more eternal than gold? But the truth becomes falsehood the moment it is severed from its source. The jewels of the world are not evil in themselves, they are mirrors. They show us what we adore. And what mankind adores most is himself. It begins innocently. A small token, a reward for hard work, a symbol of love, a celebration of success. But symbols are powerful things. They shape the spirit of those who carry them. A ring, worn for too long, begins to believe it owns the finger. A gem, praised too often, begins to whisper that it is divine. And soon the line between gratitude and idolatry blurs. We no longer thank God for the stone. We thank the stone for God. The enchantment is not in the gem, it is in our gaze. We are spellbound by the reflection of our own vanity. The devil is never needed to curse gold. He simply taught men to adore it. There is a certain cruelty in beauty. It promises fulfillment but delivers only fascination. It tells you that if you can possess it, you will be enough. Yet the moment you do, the hunger returns sharper than before. The jewel gleams most when you don't own it. The light that seduced you dims the moment you call it yours. That is the nature of all false enchantment. It gives the illusion of permanence to what was always fleeting. The serpent that whispered to Eve did not offer death. He offered clarity, self-knowledge, empowerment. He offered something that looked divine but was rooted in rebellion. So it is with the jewels of this world. They do not say, "Serve me." They say, "Become like gods." End of. The danger of enchanted stones is not that they corrupt the body, but that they anesthetize the soul. They convince you that the visible world is all there is, that light itself is owned by those who can afford it. And when the soul forgets the invisible, it becomes restless, insecure, desperate to prove its worth through visible means. The necklace becomes a shield, the diamond a declaration, the brand a gospel. The wearer believes that beauty has clothed him, but in truth, he is clothed in fear. Fear of being unseen, unadmired, unloved. How many of us live this way, mistaking admiration for affection, attention for validation, glitter for grace? There was once a time when stones were altars, reminders of what was sacred. Now they are trophies, reminders of who conquered whom. And yet, even in this, God hides mercy. For every idol we create eventually disappoints us. Every stone loses its magic in the end. And when it does, The soul is forced to look beyond the surface it once worshipped. This disappointment, though painful, is a kind of salvation. The shattering of illusion is often the first step toward truth. The loss of false glory is the beginning of genuine light. Do you know why kings wore crowns? Not merely to signify power, but to remind themselves that the weight of gold is heavy. It presses down upon the skull, humbling the neck that must bear it. The crown was meant to teach responsibility, not pride. But man, forgetting the lesson, sought lighter crowns not in duty, but in display. And so the world filled with coronations of vanity. We wear our pride not as burden, but as ornament, our ambition not as calling, but as costume. We call it success, but it is simply the worship of ourselves, the oldest religion on earth. The true danger is not that the jewelry is enchanted, but that the heart is. When the heart begins to sparkle more with self-love than with gratitude, when it becomes obsessed with being adorned rather than being refined, then it becomes its own idol. The ancient prophets warned against carved images, but they could not have imagined our mirrors, our screens filled with faces praying for validation. We no longer kneel before statues. We kneel before reflections. Our prayers have become captions, our devotion performance. And yet the divine still waits, patient as ever, behind the veil of our vanity, whispering, "You are not what you wear. You are what you love." The soul is not impressed by emeralds or rubies. It glows with only one light, that of truth. And truth cannot be polished or purchased. It must be lived. It is forged, not in minds, but in moments in forgiveness, in sacrifice, in humility. The most radiant gems of heaven are not mined from the earth, but born in the heart that refuses to betray itself. Faithfulness under pressure, love that outlasts pain, courage that speaks softly. These are the true stones of the Spirit. They carry no curse because they carry no price. The great paradox is this. The world adorns itself to feel valuable, while heaven strips away to reveal value. The world polishes, heaven purifies. The world decorates, heaven sanctifies. One adds more. The other removes until only the essential remains. And what remains when all adornment is gone is what you really are, a soul naked before eternity. That moment, though terrifying, is freedom itself. For when you no longer hide behind gold, you can finally shine with grace. C.S. Lewis once wrote that every temptation is a distorted echo of a true desire. The desire for beauty is not evil, it is holy. But when beauty ceases to point to God and points only to us, it becomes poison. The jewel is only a tragedy when it becomes the goal instead of the symbol. In its purest form, it reminds us of divine craftsmanship, of how something raw, hidden, and buried can become luminous through time, pressure, and patience. But when we seek only the shine, we skip the transformation. We want the polish without the process, the glory without the grind, the crown without the cross. That is why the age of enchantment has become the age of emptiness. Every time you choose meaning over appearance, you reclaim your soul. Every time you resist the urge to display what should remain sacred, you break the spell. Every time you love without expecting reward, you undo the curse. The enchanted stones lose their power when faced with authenticity, because authenticity has its own light one that cannot be counterfeited. So do not despise beauty, but see through it. Do not fear wealth, but master it. Do not worship the gift, but remember the giver. The world will always try to sell you stones, promises of immortality, relevance, and validation. But the only gem worth wearing is the one that forms within, under the pressure of truth. The longer it forms, the deeper it glows. And when the world demands to see what adorns you, you will not point to gold or diamonds, but to peace, to purpose, to love that no corruption can touch. In the end, The enchanted stones of the earth will crumble back into dust, but the soul that has learned to see God in every shimmer, and never mistake the shimmer for God, that soul will shine forever. For it has found the one treasure that cannot be mined, bought, or lost, the light that no darkness can extinguish. The enchantment of the world grows subtler with each generation. Once men bowed before idols carved from wood and stone. Now they bow before symbols carved from meaning a brand name, a reputation, an image carefully polished for admiration. The jewelry we wear today is not only metal, it is metaphor. It is the visible manifestation of the invisible hunger that haunts us, the need to be seen, to be chosen, to be significant. And so, these stones we call enchanted are not cursed by demons, but by our own confusion. We have forgotten that to be loved and to be admired are not the same thing. Love sees through you. Admiration stares at you. Love calls you home. Admiration keeps you performing. The modern man is a performer dressed in mirrors. He has mistaken reflection for identity. He no longer asks, "Who am I?" but rather, "How do I appear?" Every necklace, every gemstone, every sparkle on the wrist becomes a line in the script of self-presentation. We adorn ourselves not to express who we are, but to distract from who we are not. And this is the silent tragedy of our age, that we have traded being known for being noticed. Even our spirituality has not escaped the enchantment. We speak of energy, of vibrations, of manifestation, as if the divine were another marketplace to bargain with. We are willing to believe in anything that promises power without surrender. We wear crosses, crystals, sigils, and charms, not as reminders of humility, but as tools of control. We want blessings without obedience, healing without repentance, miracles without transformation. The enchanted stones become our intermediaries, pretty lies we can hold in our hands to avoid facing the truth we fear in our hearts. But the true sacred stone is not something you buy, it is something you become. The jewel of the Spirit is formed under pressure, under trial, loss, failure, and forgiveness. It is shaped not by hands, but by surrender. You cannot polish it, you can only protect it, you cannot display it, you can only live it. It shines quietly through character, through kindness, through endurance. The one who possesses it does not flaunt it, because real radiance does not compete with the light. C.S. Lewis once said that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. The soul, once humbled, begins to see clearly again. The fog of enchantment lifts, and beauty is restored to its rightful throne, not as an idol, but as an echo of God. The gem that once enslaved your imagination becomes a reminder of his craftsmanship. You begin to see that the same God who hides diamonds in the earth hides greatness in the soul, and both are revealed through pressure. The mind and the heart share the same process: darkness, weight, and time. Out of what seemed buried beyond hope emerges something that could refract light itself. And perhaps that is why we were drawn to stones in the first place, not because they are valuable, but because they remind us of what we could be, hardened by struggle, purified by time, luminous from within. The stone's beauty is not its curse, it is its parable. It does not lie about God. It reveals him if we have the eyes to see. But how many eyes today can still see? We are surrounded by light, yet blinded by it. The world glows, but it no longer illuminates. We have become addicted to brightness without depth, brilliance without warmth. We scroll through lives that shimmer but do not shine, and call it enlightenment. We have mistaken the reflection of light for the presence of it, and so the soul grows dim starving not from lack of beauty, but from beauty without meaning. You cannot cure darkness by collecting lamps. You must ignite a flame within. The greatest mistake of our civilization is thinking that illumination comes from outside. The saints, the mystics, the poets, they all knew otherwise. They did not chase stars, they became them. Their light was not borrowed, but born. It came from the slow, unseen alchemy of surrender, from learning to be still enough that truth could settle, to be silent enough that love could speak, to be empty enough that grace could fill. The enchanted stones may promise protection, but what they really offer is distraction. They cannot shield you from sorrow, because sorrow is sacred. They cannot remove fear, because fear is the forge where courage is made. They cannot bring peace, because peace is not the absence of turmoil, it is the presence of trust. And no talisman can create trust, only truth can. If you must wear something, wear remembrance. Let every ring remind you of promises kept, every bracelet of hands you have lifted, every gem of moments you were broken but not destroyed. Let your jewelry be history, not vanity, a story of how light entered your cracks and made you holy. And if one day you have nothing left to wear, may your nakedness be your glory, for the unadorned soul is the most radiant of all. For in the end, the enchanted stones will lose their luster, and the names of their makers will fade. But the light born from integrity, the beauty forged in truth, the wealth measured in compassion, these will outlast time. When the final jewel of this earth turns to dust, the divine will still be searching, not for gold or silver, but for souls that learn to shine without them. And in that eternal searchlight may you be found, not polished, not perfect, but real, a living stone in the architecture of the infinite. And if there is one thing the soul learns, after wandering through all the glitter and glare of the world, it is that there is no gem more radiant than an honest heart. The enchanted stones, however finely cut, eventually fall silent. Their light fades because it never belonged to them in the first place. They were merely borrowing brilliance from the sun, just as we borrow breath from eternity. Every diamond that dazzles, every sapphire that sings of oceans, every emerald that mirrors spring, they are echoes, not origin. The tragedy is not that we admire them, but that we forget to trace the echo back to its source. When the world was young, beauty existed only as revelation, not possession. To see it was to worship. To touch it was to tremble. But somewhere along the way, we lost that reverence. We turned beauty into a transaction, mystery into merchandise. And the moment something holy becomes profitable, it begins to die. The same is true of the human heart. When it starts seeking worth in applause or currency, the pulse of wonder slows. The light dims, not because the soul is weak, but because it was never designed to survive off imitation light. Think of the way light touches water, effortless, fluid, never clinging. It illuminates, but never owns. That is how divine beauty behaves. It moves through, never settles upon. But human greed tries to cage what was meant to flow. We trap the light inside stone, hang it around our necks, call it ours, and yet, when night falls, the stone sits cold against our skin, lifeless without the Sunday. The lesson is simple. Nothing that depends on borrowed light can satisfy the soul that was born of eternal flame. You will find, if you listen deeply enough, that every glittering thing eventually asks you the same question: who are you when I no longer shine for you? And that question will divide the seekers from the worshippers. The seeker will move on to the next illusion, hungry for another spark. The worshipper, the one who truly sees, will close his eyes and realize that the light was within him all along. That realization is not small. It is the death of vanity and the birth of vision. There is a moment in every life when the enchantment breaks. It may happen in loss, in silence, in solitude, when everything you thought you needed slips through your fingers like dust. In that emptiness, you discover what cannot be lost. It is then that the true stone appears, not on your hand, but in your chest, heavy with wisdom, bright with mercy. That is the cornerstone of your rebirth, the gem that heaven polishes through suffering until it reflects only love. The great irony is that the more we strip away, the more radiant we become. Gold cannot add to the light of a sunrise. Diamonds cannot compete with a clear conscience. Silver cannot outshine sincerity. The only jewelry worth keeping is the one no thief can touch, the crown of character, the ring of resolve, the bracelet of forgiveness. They may not sparkle under chandeliers, but they shimmer in the dark places of the world, where God still walks unseen. Look at the saints and the sages. They wore no ornaments, yet history still bows before their glow. Their wealth was invisible, but it fed generations. Their words were not engraved in gold, yet they have outlasted empires. They did not chase luxury, they carried eternity in their breath. And perhaps that is the secret we were meant to remember, that you were never called to decorate yourself with glory, but to become a vessel of it. The universe does not need your shine, it needs your reflection. The enchanted stones of the earth are not evil, they are invitations. They whisper, "Find in me what you have lost in yourself." But the wise know that the invitation is not to worship the stone, but to understand its language, to recognize that its brilliance is borrowed, its permanence an illusion. When you see beauty and do not cling, when you touch wonder and do not possess, when you let the light pass through you instead of hoarding it, that is when you are free. And freedom is the one luxury that outlasts all others. It is not bought. It is remembered. It is the natural state of the soul, when it is no longer seduced by imitation heavens. The world will still try to sell you its charms. It will tell you that worth gleams, that holiness sparkles, that truth can be branded. Smile at it. Walk through it like a pilgrim through a marketplace. Let your eyes admire, but let your heart remain anchored in what cannot be priced. Because in the end, all the enchanted stones return to the earth that birthed them. The mountains reclaim their shine, the oceans their pearls, the stars their dust. Only one light continues, the one you kept alive within. And when your body too returns to dust, that light will rise unburdened, recognized not by its brilliance but by its warmth. Then the Maker will look upon you, not at what you wore, but at what you became, and say, "You are the jewel I buried in the world. You endured the pressure. You learned to refract love. You did not confuse the glow for the source." And in that gaze, all enchantments will end, for the only magic that remains will be truth itself. That is the final revelation. The stones were never enchanted, you were, and the spell was love all along. And so the story continues, not as myth, not as metaphor, but as the slow awakening of something ancient in you, the remembering of your first light. You begin to realize that the fascination with jewels, with their gleam and their promise, was never about possession. It was about recognition. You were drawn to them because, at some deep and unspoken level, they resembled you. You too were hidden once, buried in darkness, pressed by time, shaped by invisible hands. You too were meant to shine, not from polish, but from purity. Every stone is a prophecy written in mineral form. What endures pressure without losing beauty becomes a mirror of the divine. And yet how easy it is to forget that the same pressure that forms diamonds can also destroy them if they are not yet ready. The world hurries you, seduces you with shortcuts, whispers that perfection can be purchased, that holiness can be simulated, that peace can be marketed. It shows you rings and necklaces, awards and titles, followers and fame, each one glistening with the same promise. Wear me, and you will be complete. But no stone, no symbol, no admiration can substitute the sacred process of becoming. You cannot outsource the alchemy of the soul. The enchanted stones gleam in the display windows of the world, and we walk past them believing they are the treasure. But the real treasure is the hunger that awakens when you look at them, the yearning for beauty that cannot be owned. That hunger, if you let it lead you, will not end at the counter of luxury. It will end at the threshold of heaven, because desire itself, purified by truth, becomes prayer. It is the bridge between what you think you want and what your soul actually longs for. And what your soul longs for is not gold, not glory, but grace. Grace is the only element not for sale. It arrives unannounced, unearned, unpolished. It visits the poor and the proud alike, but only stays with the humble. It will not live in a heart crowded with glitter, but it will turn a single tear into a diamond of compassion. Grace cannot be displayed, yet everyone who meets it feels its light. That is the ultimate reversal of enchantment. When you stop chasing brilliance and start becoming a source of it, you will know you are changing when silence no longer scares you, when simplicity begins to taste like freedom, when giving feels richer than receiving. These are the first signs that the spell is breaking. The world will call you strange for walking away from its charms, but strangeness is the first step toward sanctity. Do not expect applause. The path of truth rarely passes through crowds. It winds quietly through the unseen corners of your conscience, asking you to choose again and again between comfort and clarity. But the reward is unlike anything the earth can offer. You will find yourself unburdened, breathing deeper, seeing beauty where others see nothing. A drop of rain will look like a gem. A kind word will feel like a crown. A sunrise will be more magnificent than any display case in the world. For the soul that sees truth needs no decoration. It radiates from within, turning every ordinary thing into a sacrifice. And when you meet others still under the spell, those still measuring their worth in carats, and followers, do not judge them. Remember how long it took for your own chains to fall. Speak softly. Be light, not lecture. For no one escapes illusion by being condemned. They escape when they encounter something real enough to make illusion lose its flavor. Be that reality. Be the presence that makes pride uncomfortable and humility possible. Be the quiet proof that peace exists without polish. One day, the world as we know it will end not with violence, but with silence. The marketplaces will close, the lights will dim, the stones will rest in the earth again. And in that eternal twilight, only the souls who learn to love beyond luxury will still shine. They will be the true constellations scattered across eternity, each reflecting the light of the one who never sold his glory, but gave it freely. So if you must collect something, collect moments of mercy. If you must wear something, wear truth. If you must display something, display kindness. These are the jewels that never dull, the treasures that follow you beyond the grave. They are the only adornments that will fit in heaven. You were born for more than brilliance. You were born for light. Brilliance fades when the lamps go out, but light survives the night. And as long as you remember that, the world may sparkle around you, but it will never seduce you again. For the spell is broken, and the soul that sees through the glitter knows the difference between gold and glory. And so you walk on, not as the buyer or the seller, not as the admirer or the cynic, but as the witness. The world remains enchanted, but you are no longer enchanted by it. You have seen where the true treasure lies, not in the stones of the earth, but in the heart refined by heaven. And as the journey of the soul unfolds towards its quiet horizon, you come to see that every glittering temptation that once blinded you was only a reflection of something greater, a distorted echo of divine longing. You begin to understand that what you sought in the shine of jewels was never wealth, never prestige, never admiration. It was belonging. It was the desire to return to the brilliance you came from, to the radiance of meaning that existed before the world taught you to measure yourself by what could be counted. The world tells you to decorate yourself so that others may see you. Heaven whispers for you to empty yourself so that God may dwell in you, and the whisper wins slowly. You start to notice that the more you let go, the lighter you become. You give without calculation, and somehow your hands never feel empty. You love without conditions, and the love multiplies instead of diminishes. You forgive, and your wounds become windows. That is how the true alchemy works. The metal of ego is melted by the fire of mercy until it becomes a mirror of grace. There is a peace that enters once you stop fighting for visibility. It is a peace so profound, it can only be described as remembering. You remember that your worth was never determined by the eyes that saw you, but by the breath that gave you life. You remember that everything you have been chasing was already within you, buried, waiting, patient. The soul is not a mind to be exploited. It is a garden to be tended. And the seeds of light within you do not respond to force, only to faith. So let the world have its enchanted stones. Let them shimmer. Let them boast. Let them burn with a fever of scarcity. You have found abundance elsewhere in the sunrise that asks for no applause, in the silence that no noise can imitate, in the humility that makes you invisible to men but radiant to heaven. The truly rich are those who have learned how to live without envy, for envy is the shadow cast by ignorance, and ignorance is simply the refusal to see yourself as you are. The enchanted stones still sparkle in the windows, and you still admire them, but now the admiration is holy. You no longer want to possess, you want to praise. You no longer crave ownership, you crave understanding, and that shift changes everything. You can walk through the same world without being devoured by it. You can look upon its beauty without losing your soul to its glitter. For once you see through the illusion, you are no longer its prisoner. You start to notice how every gem, every ruby, every diamond, every amethyst is really a sermon in silence. The ruby burns like love that endures suffering. The diamond, pure and unyielding, mirrors the strength of truth. The emerald, with its green breath, speaks of rebirth. The amethyst, the stone of sobriety, whispers of clarity amid confusion. And suddenly you realize that the earth has been preaching all along. You simply weren't listening. The stones were not enchanted. They were teachers. Their language was purity. Their gospel was endurance. Their miracle was patience. It is not the world that needs to change. It is your vision. When the eyes of the soul open, every stone becomes sacred, every shadow reveals light. You begin to see God not just in Scripture, but in symmetry, not just in churches, but in creation. The boundary between sacred and secular dissolves, and you stand in awe of the truth that everything was always holy. It was not the earth that was cursed. It was our gaze that was corrupted. And in this revelation, something shifts forever. You stop seeking miracles and start becoming one. You stop waiting for heaven to appear after death and start building it here, now, in every act of love, every gesture of kindness, every quiet surrender. The kingdom of God does not descend with spectacle. It unfolds in ordinary obedience. Each moment you choose truth over comfort, humility over pride, faith over fear. You polish the hidden jewel of your spirit. The enchanted stones of the earth will continue to shine in their glass prisons, admired and envied. But you, having touched eternity, will carry a different kind of light, the kind that needs no display, the kind that lives in eyes that have forgiven the world. You will walk different. You will speak with gentleness that does not tremble before power. You will stand amid the noise with a silence that commands respect. And though the world may not understand you, it will feel you. Because true light does not argue, it simply reveals. And one day, long after the last gem has lost its shimmer, after every vault has emptied and every empire has turned to dust, a quiet voice will call you by name. It will not ask what you owned, but what you loved. It will not weigh your possessions, but your compassion. It will not look at the sparkle on your hands, but the glow in your heart. And in that moment, you will finally see the purpose behind every stone you ever chased, every desire that ever burned. They were all meant to lead you here to the recognition that nothing outside you can complete you, because the infinite has always lived within you. And so you will bow, not in defeat, but in awe. You will whisper, "All that glitters was only a shadow of your light." And the heavens will respond, not with thunder, but with a smile that has waited since the beginning. Now you understand. You are the treasure I hid in the world. And with that, the enchantment ends, not because the magic is gone, but because it has finally been fulfilled. The stones no longer hold you. You hold the light. And in that moment, for the first time, you are truly, eternally free. And freedom, when it finally arrives, is not the shout of rebellion the world promised you. It is the quiet exhale of recognition. It is the sacred calm that fills the chest when you no longer need to chase anything to feel alive. You walk lighter, not because the path has changed, but because the burden of pretending has fallen away. The chains that once glittered like trophies are revealed for what they always were, heavy ornaments of fear. And the soul, unclothed of pride, unpainted by vanity, stands radiant as it was meant to be, a creature of eternity wrapped in flesh, carrying the memory of heaven within its heartbeat. You begin to see that what you mistook for emptiness was never lack. It was space, sacred space, waiting for truth to dwell. The quieter the heart becomes, the more it begins to hear. The more it lets go, the more it begins to receive. And what it receives is not applause or admiration, but understanding that all things, when seen through the eyes of love, belong to God. Even the stones that once enslaved your imagination were only instruments of revelation, tools through which the Creator whispered, "Look deeper. What you adore is only a reflection of what I already placed inside you." The jewels of the world lose their spell when you realize that everything they promise has already been fulfilled in the soul. You no longer need to own beauty. You need only to behold it. You no longer crave wealth. You crave wisdom. You no longer chase the shimmer of recognition. You long for the stillness of truth. And in that stillness, the world itself begins to change color. What was once loud becomes melodic. What was once ordinary becomes luminous. The wind feels like language, the light feels like touch, and the silence feels alive. This is the peace the prophet spoke of, the joy that no market can sell. It is not a joy that shouts. It hums like a secret that has always been true. You'll begin to see that even your past, the greed, the envy, the restless pursuit, was not wasted. It was necessary. For how could you ever value light if you had not been blinded by imitation? How could you ever understand grace if you had not first drowned in guilt? How could you ever taste eternity if you had not once tried to satisfy your hunger with dust? Every detour, every disappointment, every false idol was a teacher disguised as temptation, and they all led you here to the unlearning that feels like awakening. And now, when you see those enchanted stones in the hands of kings, around the necks of those who still believe in their magic, you no longer feel condemnation or envy. You feel compassion. You see the ache behind the luxury, the loneliness behind the glow. You know that they are not evil. They are asleep. And sleep is not sin. It is simply waiting for dawn. So you do not preach at them. You live as light among them. You do not shout truth. You embody it. You do not condemn their hunger. You feed their hope by your presence. You become the proof that peace is possible without possession, that holiness can exist in a human face. For every age has its idols, but also its witnesses, those who remember that creation is not meant to be owned, but adored. And when the witnesses appear, the world trembles a little, because their peace is louder than all the noise. They remind us that purity is not fragility. It is strength refined by surrender. They remind us that humility is not weakness. It is power mastered by love. And they remind us that the truest light is not seen in what we display, but in how we forgive. As the years pass, the jewels of the world will continue to sparkle, and humanity will continue to mistake reflection for source. Yet, quietly, in every generation, there will be souls who see, who look through the shimmer, and recognize eternity shining back. They will walk unseen through crowds, their lives a living prayer, their every step a silent sermon. They will bless without speaking, heal without touching, transform without being noticed. And though the world may never celebrate them, heaven will, for they are the true bearers of light, not the ones who glitter, but the ones who glow. And when the final chapter of the world is written, when all the treasures of earth lie still, when the sun itself fades, and the stars return to their maker, there will remain only those lights that were never borrowed, the souls who learned to love. For love is the only jewel time cannot dull, the only fire that burns without consuming. It is the one treasure that cannot be forged, faked, or stolen, because it is not something you have, it is something you become. So let this be your crown, not gold, not gemstone, but grace. Let your life be the ring that binds heaven and earth together. Let your words be pearls of kindness cast into the oceans of misunderstanding. Let your heart be the mine where mercy is discovered anew each day. And when you leave this world, may it be said not that you possessed much, but that you illuminated much. For there is no greater inheritance than to leave behind more light than you found. And in that final hour, when the noise of ambition dies and the silence of truth returns, you will hear it again, that ancient whisper that followed you through every temptation, every glittering distraction, every storm of pride. It will say, you were never chasing stones. You were always chasing me. And then, at last, you will understand. You were never meant to wear jewels. You were meant to become one, not cut by human hands, but carved by divine patience, not polished by ambition, but by surrender, not set in gold, but in glory. And as eternity opens its gates, the light within you, long hidden, long tested, long refined, will rise and join the infinite brilliance from which it came. And creation itself will look upon you and say, behold, the jewel of God. And in that moment, there will be no more enchantment, no more illusion, no more hunger, only light, endless and true, shining forever through you.